What's up, mob? Happy Friday. My name is Holly, if I've never gotten the chance to meet you, and I'm the Associate Youth Pastor at Epic Youth Orlando. We meet in a building right across the street from UCF, so if you've ever been to a UCF football game before pandemics were a thing, chances are you've probably passed us or even parked in the parking lot. And let me tell you, I love that Epic building. Not because buildings have any sort of crazy special power, but because when I was a middle school and high school student, I went to that building week after week, and I found myself completely changed and flipped upside down by the love of God. By the love of God that I experienced in that place, by the people I met in that place. And so that's why I'm there now, is because I really believe that love can encounter every single one of you guys too as a student. And so super pumped to be here with you guys virtually today, and just want to make sure you know, if you have a church home and a youth group that you go to now, I celebrate that, and I'm so glad you're growing. If you don't have that space, just know that Epic's an open house and an open family, and we would love to be that for you anytime. Right now over Zoom, but anytime, we'd love for you guys to join us. So I only have one verse that Emma has given me today for Philippians, so she really set me up well, and I still believe God has so much to speak through it. So I'm going to read it out for you. It's in Philippians 4, and then we'll hear a few things God has to say. It says, "Do not be anxious in anything, but in everything by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." And this is the verse Emma gave me. "And the peace of God, which transcends or surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Now, I know what I'm probably supposed to feel when I read this verse. And it feels kind of weird to tell you guys, honestly, that I don't. I feel like I'm probably supposed to feel some peaceful, warm, fuzzy, hopeful feelings. But honestly, the way I feel when I read this verse is frustration. I don't feel peaceful feelings. I almost feel frustrated with Paul, the guy who's writing this. It made me think of the first time that I learned to rotate my tires in my car. Shout out to any of you guys who currently drive a car. If you didn't know, you have to get your tires rotated every once in a while. And so the time came, I had to rotate my tires, and so my dad was teaching me how to do it. Long story short, you have to loosen the little lug nuts, the little things on your tire. You have to change them around and then use this wrench that kind of looks like a boat wheel, and you attach it to it and you have to twist it so that you can rotate the tires. Looked super simple. My dad showed it to me and I was like, I've got this. And then I gave it a shot myself. And I grabbed the wrench, went up to the tire, and I attempted to twist it, and what looked so easy for him felt so impossible for me. Guys, it's embarrassing, but my arms were like shaking. It got to a place where my dad thought it was so funny that he started videotaping my attempts that kept on messing up. And it was so frustrating and funny, but frustrating, because what looked so easy felt so impossible. And I feel that with this verse. As Paul is talking about peace, and he says the peace of God will guard your hearts and your mind in Christ Jesus. It's one of those, for me, those verses that it's like, wow, that would be nice. But it feels impossible for that to be an actual reality. See, if we're talking and you say the word peace, for me, I don't know what comes to mind for you, but what comes to mind for me is like calm, Zen sort of music, somebody doing yoga in like a dimly lit room with a candle going. Like, these are the images of peace that kind of come up in my mind. And that's why I think this verse can be really frustrating, because maybe we misunderstand what peace is. You know, it's funny. Paul even says this is a peace that goes beyond understanding. Now, I don't know about you, but the things that we don't understand usually are not the things that bring us peace. The way that we don't understand what school's gonna look like when we come back in the fall. The way you don't understand why that person didn't text you back. The way you don't understand why this happened in your life. Those things don't really bring us peace. They usually well up a lot more anxiety or stress. And yet that's, I think, the first hint that this peace Paul's talking about is different than the world's peace. And it made me think of actually when Jesus was headed to the cross. It's the night before this, and he's talking with his disciples. And I'd imagine Jesus is feeling an incredible amount of fear and anxiety and stress and worry and panic, all just welling up in him as he knows what he's going to be going into later with the cross. And yet in the conversation with his disciples, here's what he says. It's in John 14:27. He says, "My peace I give you, my peace I leave you, and I don't give it as the world gives. Don't let your hearts be troubled and don't be afraid." I think he hints at the power of peace in this verse, and is that this is the sort of peace that isn't just kind of a warm and fuzzy feeling. This is the sort of peace that means that we can be okay even when everything around us isn't okay. And that's the scary thing about this verse, is that it says the peace of God will guard our hearts and mind. This isn't a promise or even a suggestion that everything around us will be okay. You only guard something if there's danger or a threat or an enemy. If you're on the basketball court and you're guarding somebody on the opposite team, it's because they're going to come at and try to score. So that's why celebrities have bodyguards, and because they need to be protected from crazy stalkers and paparazzis and people following them around. This guarding language actually suggests that there might be a danger that's not going to disappear. And that can be kind of a scary thing, but it can be a really beautiful thing when we realize that this is a peace that doesn't depend on a circumstance or a situation or even how we feel in the moment. It's more powerful than that. You know, I think it's beautiful because if we don't have a peace that has to wait for struggles and fears and anxieties to disappear for us to feel it, then that means we can be okay when everything isn't okay, because peace isn't the absence of something, it's the presence of someone. And let me tell you that someone wants to meet with you and be with you and go with you throughout your day. There's a quote that's been attributed to a lot of people, but we'll just quote it and kind of let it be anonymous for now. And it says, "All the water of the oceans in the world couldn't sink a ship unless it got inside it." There's something about peace that allows us not to avoid the waves out of fear of the chaos, but that allows us to ride it with our King. And there's confidence in that, and there's courage in that. And so the last question I want to tackle together is how? Like, this is awesome and all, but how do we really present ourselves into that peace? How do we get there? And I think Paul gives us one really good hint in verse 6, which I read before verse 7. He says, "Don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds." The only advice we get here is to pray. And I know that might kind of wrap us back to the beginning and sound so simple and easy to do, but impossible once we get into it. But I encourage you that this prayer isn't earning anything. It isn't some magic words that's supposed to create a feeling in your heart or supposed to make everything better. Praying is a conversation with a person. And so this prayer, as we present our requests to God, as we aren't ashamed in bringing our hearts and anything on them to God, it puts us in the presence of the person who is himself peace. And as we meet him, that peace becomes ours. So Mob, that's my prayer for you, is that as you spend a little bit more time in these verses, as you go about your weekend, as you guys even head back to Timber Creek or whatever schools that you're going to go to, that this peace would be real and that would guard your hearts, not as a feeling, but as a person. And that as you have a peace that doesn't make sense, that you'd be a people that doesn't make sense in the best and most beautiful sort of way. Hope you guys have an awesome Friday. Thanks for letting me join you.